I've never seen so many pastel-colored balloons in my life. They floated and bobbed around the backyard like smug little clouds, each one a reminder that this day was about everything I apparently was not. A loving husband, a cozy home, a baby on the way. I forced a smile as I stepped out of my old Honda Civic, its dented door protesting when I shut it a little too hard. The sight of my sister's immaculate suburban house made the knot in my stomach tighten. I'm Arden Whitlock, 32, single, self-employed graphic designer, owner of a cat named Nimbus who loves me more than any man ever has. That's what I told myself anyway, every time I saw my mother's eyes flick to my bare ring finger. I gathered my gift, a soft, mint green baby blanket I'd spent 2 weeks knitting by hand, and tried to breathe away the thought that maybe I should have just stayed home. But I had promised my sister I'd come, and when you're the older sister, there's an unspoken rule. You show up, even when it stings. Inside, the house was buzzing with high-pitched laughter, the sweet scent of vanilla cupcakes, and the polite hum of polite people politely pretending not to judge. My sister, Liana, stood at the center of it all, radiant in a flowing white maternity dress that made her look like some ethereal goddess about to give birth to perfection itself. Her husband, Mitchell, hovered behind her like an obedient puppy, passing her water, adjusting the chair cushions. They made such a picture-perfect couple, and every time I saw them, a tiny, sharp bitterness dug into my ribs. "Arden, you made it!" Liana squealed, arms outstretched. I hugged her carefully, mindful of the bump that seemed to have a gravitational pull of its own. "You look incredible," I managed, meaning it. She did. She always did. "You too," she said, though her eyes skimmed my thrifted dress, the one I'd hoped looked vintage chic but probably just looked sad. Before I could settle into any comfortable small talk, a gaggle of Liana's friends swept her away in a chorus of baby talk and giggles. I stood there, a cup of lukewarm punch in my hand, already wishing I could melt into the garden hedges. That's when my mother's voice drifted over from the snack table. "Arden, darling, come say hello to Mrs. Healy. You remember her? She was at your sister's wedding." Of course I remembered her. Mrs. Healy was the kind of woman who made you feel like your entire worth was printed on a resume she kept tucked in her handbag. I plastered on my best good girl smile. "So, Arden, are you seeing anyone yet?" Mrs. Healy asked, her beady eyes gleaming like she already knew the answer. "Not right now, no. Just focusing on work," I said, praying the ground would swallow me whole. "Still all on your own, then?" "Well, not everyone is meant for family life, I suppose. Some women just choose other paths." My mother cleared her throat, looking at me the way she looked at a crooked picture frame. "She's just picky. One day, the right man will sweep her off her feet." I almost choked on my punch. The right man. That's what they'd always said, as if a Prince Charming might appear from behind a bush at any moment, wedding ring in hand. "Oh, I'm not waiting for anyone to rescue me," I said lightly. "I'm doing just fine on my own." Mrs. Healy gave me that patronizing smile that made my skin crawl. "Of course, dear. But time does fly, doesn't it? Tick-tock." The way she said it, tick-tock, landed like a slap. I felt my cheeks flush, my stomach twist. I set my cup down and muttered an excuse about needing fresh air. I pushed through the French doors onto the deck, my breath misting in the crisp spring air. From there, I could still hear the laughter drifting from inside. My sister's laughter, sweet and soft and smug. And then, the inevitable happened. Someone decided the baby shower games weren't enough fun. Someone decided the entertainment should be me. "Hey, Arden," called a voice. I turned to see Clara, one of Liana's oldest friends, and her gaggle of perfectly coiffed clones trailing behind her like ducklings. "Come play Guess the Baby Food with us." "I'm good, thanks," I said, forcing a smile. "Aw, come on. We can't have you brooding out here by yourself. Who knows, maybe you'll meet a single dad today. Isn't that what all the apps are for?" A few of them giggled. The laughter stabbed deeper than any insult. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. "Actually," I said, my voice tight, "I'm seeing someone. He's just busy." "Really?" Clara cocked her head, the smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "Busy? Doing what? Flying to Mars?" "Something like that," I shot back. He travels a lot for work. They shared a look, one of those silent conversations mean girls have mastered since the dawn of time. I hated how small I felt under their scrutiny, how much I wanted to vanish. Inside, the games rolled on, dirty diaper sniff tests, guess the belly circumference, all of it sprinkled with sideways glances my way, like they were waiting for me to admit I'd made up my phantom boyfriend. By the time Liana opened my handmade blanket, the moment felt like an afterthought. "Oh, that's sweet, Arden," she said, barely glancing at it before moving on to the next gift, an expensive baby monitor that drew delighted squeals. I could practically feel my heart shrink 2 sizes. I slipped away to the side of the house, needing air, needing space. I leaned against the fence, blinking back tears I refused to let fall. I'd survived worse. I was strong. But damn, did it hurt to be reminded, again and again, that I was the cautionary tale at every family gathering. That's when I heard the distant hum, a deep rumble growing louder overhead. I looked up, squinting into the sky. It wasn't just any plane. It was a private jet, gleaming silver in the afternoon sun, descending in lazy loops before gliding toward the small airstrip just beyond the neighborhood. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from the one person who didn't treat me like an unfinished puzzle piece. Maddox. ***. Hey, gorgeous. Sorry for the short notice. I'm 5 minutes out. Don't move. I stared at the screen, my breath catching. Maddox Kane, the man I'd met 6 months ago at a design expo in Berlin. The man who owned a tech empire and a smile that made me feel seen. Really seen. We hadn't gone public yet, mostly because I'd wanted to keep something just for me, safe from the vultures. But maybe today was the day. I tucked my phone away, straightened my dress, and wiped my eyes. A small, defiant spark flickered in my chest. Inside, the baby shower games were winding down. Clara caught my eye through the kitchen window and raised an eyebrow, like she could already taste the next snide comment. But I was done being their punchline. A roar of engines made everyone look up. Gasps rippled through the backyard as the sleek jet came to a gentle stop just beyond the fence. Then, through the break in the hedges, he appeared. Maddox, in his perfectly tailored suit, dark hair tousled by the wind, that crooked grin that made my knees weak every damn time. He didn't hesitate. He strode up the garden path, eyes locked on mine like I was the only person who mattered in this world of pastel balloons and sugar-coated venom. "Sorry I'm late, sweetheart," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He pulled me into his arms, pressed a kiss to my forehead, then my lips. Soft but sure. Silence. The kind that happens when an entire room has its collective jaw on the floor. I caught Clara's wide eyes, Liana's parted lips, my mother's hand frozen mid-wave. Maddox turned to them, his voice calm, a razor's edge of charm. "Hope I'm not crashing the party. I thought I'd finally come meet the family." My heart thundered as he laced his fingers through mine. For the first time all day, I felt taller, stronger, unshakable. And as the shock settled over the backyard like a heavy, stunned fog, I realized this was just the beginning. I felt Maddox's hand tighten around mine as the last stunned whispers dissolved into an uneasy silence. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the warmth of his fingers threaded through mine, the faint scent of his cologne, and the tremor of disbelief crackling through the pastel wonderland of my sister's baby shower. Maddox Kane. My Maddox. The same man who sent me clumsy good morning selfies from hotel rooms across continents. Who once flew me to Santorini, just because I'd told him I'd always wanted to see the whitewashed cliffs. Now here he was, standing in my sister's backyard, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car, while his private jet idled on the little airstrip behind the hedges. All eyes were on us. On me. On this new version of me that none of them had been prepared to see. Clara's mouth opened and closed like a goldfish gasping for air. My mother's knuckles were white around her glass of punch. And Liana, my sister, my picture-perfect golden girl, looked like she'd just swallowed a mouthful of bitter medicine she couldn't spit out. Who is this?" she finally managed. Her voice pinched. Maddox's eyes flicked to her, polite but unreadable. "I'm Maddox Kane. Arden's fiancé. If the first silence had been awkward, this one was seismic. The kind of hush that leaves behind a vacuum. I felt it in my bones, the moment my family's perception of me tilted on its axis. Fiancé? Liana echoed. She forced a smile, but I saw it, the crack in her perfect hostess facade. Since when? Maddox pulled me closer, his arm slipping around my waist like he'd always belonged there. Since she finally agreed to stop running away from me. I laughed, a short, stunned sound. The truth was we hadn't formally called each other that yet, but I didn't care. I wanted the words to be real. I wanted them to see I was no longer the pity case they'd made me out to be. Clara stepped forward, her voice sticky sweet. You're engaged? Arden? You didn't even mention him at Christmas. I lifted my chin. It's been new. We kept it private. Until now. Maddox brushed his lips against my temple. Couldn't wait any longer. Some things are worth sharing with the world. His confidence, the warmth in his tone. God, I could have kissed him right there all over again. But instead, I squared my shoulders and faced them all, letting their curiosity wash over me like rain off a slicker. Mrs. Healy, her lips puckered like she'd bitten into a lemon, leaned toward my mother. Well, isn't that interesting? Arden, dear, what does he do? Maddox answered before I could. I run a little company, Kane Systems. We build software and infrastructure for aviation tech, among other things. The name hit Clara first. Her eyes widened, her carefully plucked eyebrows arching so high they almost disappeared into her hairline. Kane Systems? The Kane Systems? Like the private jet? Maddox smiled, that easy grin that made him look both dangerous and dazzling. The very one. There it was. The shift. The collective realization that the family spinster, the single cat mom, the awkward sister who didn't fit the mold, was no longer the safe butt of their jokes. I watched it settle into the corners of their faces. The disbelief, the envy, the forced congratulations. My mother finally stepped forward. Well, Maddox, it's lovely to meet you. She reached out to shake his hand, her eyes flicking between us, questions dancing behind her forced smile. You must be tired after your trip. Maddox held her hand firmly, politely. Not at all. I'd do 10 flights in a day for Arden. God, the way he said my name. It made something bloom in my chest I hadn't felt in so long. A kind of audacious, defiant pride. I wasn't some lonely spinster. I was Arden Whitlock, the woman who caught the eye, and the heart, of Maddox Kane. Liana's voice snapped me out of it. We were just about to cut the cake. Why don't you both join us? I caught the flicker of something dark in her eyes. Anger, maybe, or resentment. I couldn't blame her. This was her day, and I'd just dropped a diamond-studded bomb in the middle of it. But I was so tired of shrinking myself to fit into other people's comfort zones. Maddox guided me toward the patio, where the cake sat on a crystal stand under a spray of pink and blue balloons. The guests parted for us, whispers trailing behind like confetti. I caught snippets. Is it real? How did she land him? She must be pregnant. Maddox leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. You okay? I nodded. I am now. He squeezed my hand. Good. Because this is just the beginning, sweetheart. When Liana's husband, Mitchell, handed her the cake knife, she glanced at me. Arden, would you like to do the honors with me? A truce. Or maybe a test. I stepped forward, Maddox's arms still around me like armor. Together, Liana and I pressed the knife into the buttercream, the camera flashes popping like fireworks. I smiled for the photos, but inside I wondered if this would be the last time she ever looked at me the same way again. After the cake, the guests drifted into smaller groups. I could feel the eyes on us, the new hierarchy forming in real time. Clara slithered up beside Maddox, batting her lashes in a way that made my stomach turn. So Maddox, she purred, do you spend much time in the city? Maybe we could all do dinner sometime. Maddox didn't miss a beat. We could. Arden's the only dinner date I need, though. He pressed a soft kiss to my cheek. Clara's smile cracked like thin ice. We mingled, shook hands, smiled through forced pleasantries. My mother fussed over Maddox's coat, asking him questions she didn't really want the answers to. Liana mostly watched, her smile fixed, but her eyes sharp. When the last guest finally drifted off, balloons sagging and plates piled high with leftover cake, Liana pulled me aside. The dusk light made her look older, more tired than I'd ever seen her. "Arden," she said quietly, What is this? What do you mean? You show up here, at my baby shower, with that." She gestured toward the jet idling beyond the hedges. "With him? Did you plan this? To upstage me?" My jaw dropped. "Liana, no. You think I'd ruin your day on purpose?" She crossed her arms, her belly brushing against her forearms. "I don't know what to think. All these years you've played the victim. Poor Arden, always alone. Now you waltz in here with a billionaire fiancé and expect me to what? Applaud you?" "I didn't do this to hurt you," I said, my voice low, trying not to let it crack. "I love you. You're my sister. But I'm allowed to be happy too." She looked away, blinking rapidly. "It's always been about you, Arden. You and your big moments. Mom and Dad fawning over you when you went abroad. When you started your business. Now this." I felt the heat rising in my chest. "You think I did this for attention? I spent my entire life feeling like I was less than you. The perfect sister with the perfect husband and the perfect baby on the way. I didn't come here to compete, Liana. I came because I love you. And because Maddox wanted to meet my family." She didn't respond, just stared past me, her eyes glistening. "I'm still your sister," I whispered. "No matter what." Liana opened her mouth to say something, but Maddox's voice cut through the moment. "Everything okay here?" I turned. He stood a few steps away, hands in his pockets, watching us carefully. Liana wiped her eyes, her voice clipped. "Yeah, just sister stuff." He looked at me, searching my face for a clue. I gave him a small nod. "Not now. We'd deal with this later." He slipped his hand into mine again. "Ready to go?" I glanced back at the house, at the party debris, the sagging balloons, the fragments of my old life scattered among the rose bushes. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was stepping into something bigger, brighter, something mine. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go." As we walked toward the gate, I felt Liana's eyes on my back. I didn't know if she'd ever forgive me for being more than she expected me to be. But maybe that was okay. Because when Maddox opened the door of the sleek black car waiting at the curb, I knew this was only the first page of a new story. The engine roared to life as the baby shower lights faded behind us. Maddox squeezed my knee, his smile soft in the glow of the dashboard. "Next stop?" he asked. I glanced at him, my heart pounding with the wild, terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, this was real. "Wherever you want to take me," I whispered. And as the car slipped into the night, leaving behind the whispers and the envy and the pastel balloons, I knew this chapter was far from over. Not even close. The hum of the highway filled the quiet between us as the city lights melted into a blur beyond the tinted windows. Maddox's hand rested on my knee, his thumb brushing soft, steady circles against my skin. We hadn't spoken much since we pulled away from Liana's house, but the silence felt less like a void and more like a promise, something waiting to unfold. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, watching the rows of suburban houses give way to the steel and neon pulse of downtown. My mind replayed every moment. Clara's stunned face, my mother's forced smile, Liana's eyes dark with something I still couldn't name. Guilt twined with vindication, a bitter sweetness I didn't quite know how to swallow. "Penny for your thoughts?" Maddox's voice broke through the fog. It was soft, coaxing, but I could hear the tension beneath it. He knew today had cracked something open in me, something raw and vulnerable. "I'm just sorting it all out," I said, turning to him. His profile in the passing streetlights looked almost unreal. Sharp jaw, tousled hair, that calm, unshakable confidence that had drawn me in from day one. "Did you mean it?" He arched an eyebrow. "Mean what?" "Fiancé? You called me your fiancé today." A slow, crooked grin spread across his lips, making my heart stutter. "Arden Whitlock, are you telling me you didn't notice I've been planning how to make you mine since the night we met?" I laughed, the sound slipping out of me like a secret I hadn't known I was keeping. "I didn't want to assume." He lifted my hand, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "You never have to assume with me. You're it, always have been." I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to wrap myself in the warmth of that certainty and never come up for air. But another part of me, the part that still heard my mother's disappointed sighs and Liana's jealous barbs, whispered, "What if you lose this too?" As if he could read my mind, Maddox turned off the freeway, guiding the car toward the city's private airfield. My pulse spiked. "Where are we going?" He glanced at me, that wicked glint in his eyes. "Somewhere you can breathe, somewhere we can talk without the peanut gallery." The car rolled to a stop on the tarmac where his jet waited, sleek and silent under the harsh floodlights. A small crew hustled around it, prepping for takeoff. Maddox stepped out first, then opened my door like I was royalty. I caught the scent of jet fuel and salt on the breeze, my chest tightening with a mix of fear and thrill. "Maddox," I said as he led me up the steps into the cabin. "Where are we going?" He pressed his finger to my lips. "Somewhere you won't feel like you have to prove anything to anyone." Inside, the jet was all soft leather and warm wood accents. He poured me a glass of wine, the deep red swirling like a promise. I sank into the plush seat, my fingers trembling around the glass. "Arden," he said, settling across from me. "I know today wasn't easy. I didn't mean to crash your sister's day, but I'm done hiding." I took a sip, the wine coating my tongue like velvet. "I wasn't hiding you." He tilted his head. "You were hiding yourself. From them, from what you deserve." I set the glass down, my throat tightening. "You don't know my family. They see me a certain way. Always have. I'm the single one. The messy one. The one who makes them uncomfortable because I don't fit in their neat little boxes." Maddox reached across the table, catching my chin between his fingers. "You don't belong in boxes, sweetheart. You belong in the sky." Something broke in me then. The tears slipped out before I could stop them. All the swallowed hurts, the cruel comments, the years of feeling like I was never enough, they rose to the surface like a bruise blooming under my skin. He moved to sit beside me, pulling me into his chest. His heartbeat was steady against my ear, an anchor in the storm. "You don't have to explain yourself to me," he murmured into my hair. "You don't have to be more than you already are." "But I want to be," I whispered. "For you. For me. I don't want to shrink anymore." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his thumb brushing away my tears. "Then don't. Let's build something so big they'll never be able to tear you down again." I wanted to ask what he meant, what we meant, but the roar of the engine swallowed my questions as the jet began to taxi. My stomach dropped as we lifted into the night sky, city lights glittering below like scattered diamonds. Somewhere between takeoff and cruising altitude, I fell asleep curled against his side. When I woke, the sun was beginning to rise outside the oval window, painting the cabin in soft gold. Maddox was still awake, scrolling through something on his tablet, his hand resting possessively on my thigh. "Where are we?" I mumbled, my voice rough with sleep. He looked up, his eyes softening. "Almost there." "Where's there?" He leaned in, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "Paris." My breath caught. "Paris? Figured it was about time you saw the Eiffel Tower for real. And maybe picked out a ring." I stared at him, my heart pounding so hard it almost drowned out the whine of the engines. "You're serious?" "Deadly." We landed just as the city was waking up. Cobblestone streets bathed in dawnlight, the air crisp with the promise of spring. Maddox's driver met us on the tarmac, whisking us through customs like we were royalty. In the car, I pressed my face to the window, watching the Paris skyline unfurl like a dream. I'd always told myself I didn't need grand gestures, that I was fine on my own. But here I was, being whisked across the world by a man who made me feel like more than the punchline at a family gathering. At the hotel, an old stone building overlooking the Seine, Maddox handed me a small box before I could even drop my bag. "Open it," he said, his voice husky. Inside was a ring, a delicate band of rose gold with a single diamond that caught the morning light like a captured star. "I didn't want to wait," he said, taking the ring from the box and slipping it onto my finger. "Marry me, Arden Whitlock. Let's show them all that you were never the broken one. You were just waiting for the right wings to fly." My vision blurred as I cupped his face in my hands. Yes, 1,000 times yes. His kiss tasted like forever, like freedom, like the life I'd never let myself believe I could have. Outside, Paris was waking up, and for the first time in my life, so was I. But I knew this was only the beginning. The real world would come for us. My family, the whispers, the doubts. But for now, in this golden moment between night and day, I chose to believe in him, in us. I chose to believe that sometimes, the best revenge wasn't proving them wrong. It was living so boldly they could never deny you again. And I knew somewhere deep in my bones that this story wasn't done twisting yet. When Maddox and I stepped out of the hotel lobby that morning, the city felt like it belonged to us alone. Wet cobblestones glistening under a pale dawn, Paris still half dreaming. My hand kept drifting to the ring now snug on my finger, its delicate weight a promise I could feel with every heartbeat. It was surreal. 2 days ago, I was knitting a baby blanket at my kitchen table, bracing for polite pity smiles and pointed questions about my empty ring finger. Now, I was engaged to Maddox Kane, the man who'd landed his jet at my sister's baby shower like a thunderclap. I knew the questions would come. The judgment, too. But right now, none of it mattered. Maddox's arm was warm around my shoulders as we ducked into a little cafe near the river, the kind with cracked wooden tables and buttery croissants stacked in the window. We sat in a quiet corner, our coffees steaming between us. I caught him staring at me, like he was memorizing every detail, storing me away for a rainy day. When he looked at me like that, I didn't feel like the girl left out of family photo albums, or the spinster they whispered about over champagne flutes. I felt seen. "So," I said, tracing the rim of my cup, "what now?" He tilted his head. "What do you want?" I paused, the word heavy on my tongue. "I want my life back." "No. More than that. I want a life that's actually mine." He reached across the table, his thumb brushing my knuckles. "Then we'll build it, brick by brick. You and me." A shiver ran down my spine at the certainty in his voice. Maddox didn't speak in maybes. He made declarations and then made them real. After breakfast, we wandered the narrow streets. He stopped every few blocks to pull me into little shops. Bookstores that smelled like old leather and dust. Tiny boutiques with silk dresses draped like whispered secrets. He bought me a vintage scarf in a shade of deep emerald that made my eyes glow when he draped it around my shoulders. He tucked his arm around my waist, as if daring the world to look at me differently now. But the bubble didn't last forever. That evening, when we returned to the hotel, my phone buzzed with a dozen missed calls. My mother. Liana. Even Clara, of all people. The weight of their curiosity pressed against my ribs like a stone. Maddox noticed the way I stiffened. He took the phone from my hand, silenced it, and pressed a kiss to my forehead. "They'll keep. Tonight is just for us." But their voices still echoed in my head as I lay tangled in crisp linen sheets that smelled faintly of roses. What would they say when they found out? What would they do? I closed my eyes and tried to swallow the guilt that tasted like regret I didn't want to admit. The next morning we sat by the window, croissants on a silver tray, sunlight spilling across the parquet floor. Maddox scrolled through his emails, his brow furrowed. "You have to go back soon, don't you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, startled, then softened. "You think I'd fly you to Paris and run away again? I know your schedule. I know how much you juggle." He set the tablet aside, his chair creaking as he leaned forward. "Arden, listen to me. You're my priority now. Not just someone I text between flights. My throat tightened. What about my life back home? My work? My clients? His eyes searched mine. What do you want, really? You want to stay in that tiny apartment, knitting blankets for baby showers full of people who think you're broken? Or do you want to come with me, see the world, build something that's ours? The words stung because they were true. I didn't want to go back to being the girl who shrank to fit everyone else's expectations. But was I really ready to step into the storm that would follow me if I didn't? I set my coffee down with a shaky hand. Maddox, I need to face them, my family. I can't just disappear and let them think you're some fairy tale I made up. He nodded slowly, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. That's my girl. Then let's do it. Together. We flew home that night, the jet slicing through moonlit clouds like a blade. I sat curled against Maddox's side, my mind racing. What would my mother say when she saw the ring? Would Liana feel betrayed? A part of me wanted to hold on to the joy, to this new life blooming in my chest, but another part wondered if I'd just painted a target on my back. When we landed, dawn had barely cracked open the sky. Maddox dropped me at my apartment first. He insisted on carrying my bag up the creaky stairs, ignoring my protests that he shouldn't be hauling luggage when he had an empire to run. He paused at my door, brushing his thumb over my cheek. You know you can come with me right now. Say the word, and I'll move mountains. I leaned into him, breathing him in like a promise. I know, but I need to do this my way. His smile was both tender and proud. That's why I love you. And then he was gone, the echo of his footsteps down the hall as heavy as a heartbeat. Dash, 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 dot, dot. I spent the next day alone, turning my phone over and over in my hands. My mother's messages ranged from polite curiosity to thinly veiled panic. Asterisk, we need to talk, Arden. Asterisk, call me back immediately. Liana's texts were clipped. Can you come by? Clara's were, predictably, the worst. You can't just show up with a billionaire and ghost us. We need details. Asterisk. Details. Like my life was gossip to be passed around between wine glasses and pastel balloons. By evening, I'd made up my mind. I called Liana first. She answered on the second ring. Arden, you're alive. Last I checked, I said dryly. Can I come by? A pause. Fine, but don't bring your entourage. I almost laughed. Maddox was an entourage now. It's just me. When I arrived at her house, the baby shower decorations were gone, replaced by a chaos of baby clothes and unopened boxes of diapers stacked in corners. Liana sat on the couch, her feet propped up, eyes puffy with exhaustion. She didn't hug me when I walked in, just nodded at the chair across from her. You look different. I feel different, I said. I slipped off my glove and let the ring catch the light. Her eyes narrowed. So it's real. It's real. She leaned back, folding her arms over her belly. You know how it looked, right? You show up out of nowhere, hijack my shower, then disappear to Paris like some movie star. Mom's been fielding questions from everyone. I swallowed the prickle of guilt. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't plan for any of it to happen that way. Maddox just showed up. She snorted. Rich people always just show up, don't they? I flinched. Liana. No, don't. Look, I'm happy for you, I guess. But you blindsided me. All these years I thought you were jealous of my life. Now you've got a ring that probably cost more than my house. I bristled. This isn't about money. It's about love. About someone seeing me for who I am. She looked away, her eyes glassy. Must be nice. The silence stretched. Outside, the sky turned the color of old bruises. Finally, she sighed. Mom wants to do dinner. All of us. To process. She said I should ask you. My stomach twisted. The last thing I wanted was to sit at that table again, under those polite, judgmental stares. But I couldn't run. Not now. Okay, I said. When? Friday? 7. I stood, smoothing my coat over my hips. I'll be there. As I turned to leave, Liana's voice stopped me. Arden, don't embarrass me again, please. I met her eyes, the ache in my chest blooming into something that felt like resolve. I won't, but I won't shrink for you either. Not anymore. Her eyes flickered with something. Pride, maybe. Or fear. I didn't wait to find out. Outside, the wind cut through my coat, but my steps felt lighter than they had in years. Friday would come. The storm would come with it. But I wasn't the same girl who hid behind polite smiles and homemade blankets. I was Arden Whitlock. And this was just the beginning. Dash, dash, dash. By Friday, the sky over my mother's neighborhood had turned the color of wet concrete. It matched the knot in my stomach as Maddox and I pulled up to her house. The car idled at the curb, its sleek black shape, a stark contrast to the row of modest suburban homes lined up like careful teeth. Maddox squeezed my hand on the console between us, but for the first time since that jet appeared over my sister's baby shower, I didn't feel invincible. You don't have to do this alone, he said. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, a quiet anger reserved for anyone who'd ever made me feel small. He'd offered to handle everything, to have dinner at the best restaurant in the city, to pour so much wine and charm on the situation that my family wouldn't dare question him or me again. But I'd refused. This had to happen here, in this house that still smelled like my childhood, like pot roast and fresh lilies and 1,000 unspoken expectations. I know, I said, but I need to stand on my own feet tonight. They need to see it's me standing here, not just the man beside me. He brushed his thumb over my knuckles. Then I'll stand right behind you, every step. The porch light flicked on before we even reached the steps. My mother opened the door herself, something she hadn't done in years. She stood in the glow of the hallway lamp, her hair pinned back in its usual neat bun, lips pressed together like she was holding back a speech that had been rehearsed and revised 100 times. Maddox, Arden, she said, voice clipped, come in. The warmth of the house wrapped around us, smelling of rosemary chicken and fresh rolls. Comfort food, armor for a family trying to act like this was normal. My father sat stiffly in his chair by the window, reading glasses perched low on his nose, a newspaper he wasn't reading spread across his lap. Liana was already at the table, her husband Mitchell at her side. He gave me a small nod that felt almost like an apology for what we both knew would come. We settled around the table, the plates shining under the overhead light. My mother fussed with the napkins, smoothing and refolding them even though they were already perfect. The silence was brittle, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. So, she said finally, her eyes darting to Maddox, then to me. Tell us about this engagement. Maddox opened his mouth, but I touched his arm. This was mine. We met at a design conference in Berlin. I said, my voice steady, though my heart galloped in my chest. We kept it private because I needed something for myself. Something that wasn't picked apart by everyone. My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. You lied to us, Arden. For months. I swallowed hard. I didn't lie. I protected what was mine until I was ready to share it. Liana made a small, sharp sound. Half laugh, half scoff. And you thought the best way to share it was by showing up at my baby shower with a private jet, like something out of a soap opera. I met her eyes. I didn't plan that. He wanted to meet you all. He wanted to show up for me. My father cleared his throat. He could have called, sent flowers, not landed a plane in the middle of the neighborhood. Maddox leaned forward then, his elbows on the table, voice calm but edged with steel. I understand why you feel blindsided. But I won't apologize for loving your daughter openly. She deserves that. She deserves more than whispered pity and half-truths. My mother's lips thinned. And what do you know about what she deserves? He didn't flinch. Everything. Silence. The kind that vibrated in the bones. I took a breath, the air thick in my throat. Mom, Dad, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you that I'm happy, that I found someone who doesn't want to fix me because there's nothing to fix. Liana's fork clattered onto her plate. Is that what you think? That we've been trying to fix you all this time? I looked at her, my sister who once braided my hair before dances, and stole my sweaters, and told me all her secrets. That's how it's felt. Every time you told me to just wait for the right guy, every time you pitied me for being alone, you made me feel like I was incomplete. Her eyes glistened, but she said nothing. My mother stood, gathering plates that were still half full. This is all very dramatic, Arden. But you can't expect us to just accept this man we barely know. This man who sweeps in and… This man who loves me, I cut in, and who makes me feel like I'm enough. For once. Maddox reached under the table, his fingers finding mine. His grip was warm, steadying. My father spoke up then, his voice rough. What happens now? I lifted my chin. We get married. We build our life. I'll still be here. I'll still be your daughter. But I won't come crawling for approval every time I want to live my life. For a long moment, no one moved. Then my mother sank back into her chair, her shoulders slumping under the weight of it all. You've always been so stubborn, Arden. So sure you knew better. I forced a small smile. Maybe you raised me that way. The table fell quiet again. The clock on the mantel ticked in the silence, counting down the seconds of our old life. Finally, Maddox spoke, his voice gentle now. I know this is a lot. But I want you to know, I'm not taking her away. She chose this. She chose us. My mother's eyes met mine. For a heartbeat, something like understanding flickered there, raw and reluctant, but real. Just don't break her, she said, her voice so soft I almost missed it. Maddox's jaw tightened. I won't. Liana pushed her chair back, the legs scraping the hardwood. She crossed the room, her arms wrapping tight around her belly. Well, at least now the baby won't be the only thing Mom talks about for the next 6 months. The bitterness in her tone stung, but I didn't flinch. I stood, crossing the space between us, and touched her arm. Liana, I love you. This isn't a competition. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were tired, her mouth pulled tight at the corners. It's always felt like one, she whispered. I didn't know what to say to that, so I did what I'd always done. I let her go. Maddox and I left soon after, the night air sharp on my cheeks as we stepped off the porch. He pulled me close, pressing his lips to my temple. You did it, he murmured. I let out a shaky laugh. Not sure what I did, but I did it. He opened the car door for me. You stood up. That's all that matters. We rode home in silence, the warmth of his hand on my thigh grounding me against the echoes of the evening. The questions would keep coming. The doubts would linger, but something inside me had shifted. At my apartment door, Maddox turned me to face him. I have to leave for Tokyo in the morning, he said. Just for a few days. Come with me. I smiled, tracing the line of his jaw with my fingertips. I can't. Not yet, but I'll be here when you come back. He kissed me then. Slow and deep and so full of promise it made my knees weak. I'll be back before you know it, he said against my lips. And I believed him. When I finally crawled into bed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Liana. Let's talk. Just us. No drama. Asterisk. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Outside, the city hummed, alive and indifferent. Inside, my heart felt steadier than it had in years. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. I turned off the lamp, the diamond on my finger catching the last flicker of light before the darkness swallowed it whole. Somewhere beyond this night, the world waited, full of people who'd never see me the same way again, and I was finally ready to let them look. The day after that dinner, the city felt different. Not brighter or easier, just clearer, like a window that had been scrubbed clean of years of grime. The knot in my chest was still there, but it wasn't made of shame anymore. It was something stronger, sharper. Resolve, maybe. Maddox texted me before sunrise, a photo from his jet. His laptop open, an untouched whiskey on the tray. A single line of text beneath it. Every mile closer to you. It made me smile, but it also made my heart clench in that old familiar way. Loving him felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, equal parts thrill and terror. I spent the morning curled up on the couch with Nimbus, my cat, who seemed to sense that something fundamental had shifted. He pressed his warm little body into my side as if to say, "I know you're not the same, but I'm still here." By noon, Liana texted again. Asterisk, come over, just you. Please. Asterisk, I hesitated for an hour, pacing my tiny living room. Part of me wanted to let the silence grow thick enough to bury our old grudges forever. But the other part, the sister part, knew this talk had to happen. When I got to her house, she was sitting on the back porch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, despite the soft warmth of early spring. She didn't look up right away. Her belly seemed bigger than it had days before, the new life inside her pushing her body to the brink. "Hey," I said softly, easing down beside her. She kept her eyes on the garden. "I always thought you'd be the one with kids first. Isn't that funny?" I forced a small smile. I used to think that too. The breeze stirred the chimes that hung from the gutter. They tinkled like distant bells, filling the silence that stretched between us. "You made me look so small," she whispered, standing there with him, with that ankle ring. "You looked untouchable, Arden." I swallowed the ache in my throat. "I didn't mean to. I never wanted to hurt you." She turned, her eyes rimmed red but clear. "But you did. Because you got out. You're not stuck here, waiting for someone to tell you you're good enough. I look at you now, and I see everything I could have been if I'd been braver." Her words landed like stones. Heavy, painful, true. "Liana, you're brave every day," I said. "This baby, your life, it's yours. Just because it looks different than mine doesn't mean it's less." She let out a soft, sad laugh. "God, you sound just like Mom. Count your blessings, Liana. Smile for the photos." A long moment passed before I spoke again. "What do you want from me?" She shrugged, pulling the blanket tighter. "I don't know. Maybe just to know you won't forget where you came from. That you won't disappear into his world and leave me here with this." She gestured at her house, the garden, the ordinary life she'd built piece by piece. I reached for her hand. It was cold, her fingers thin and trembling. "I'll always be here, but I can't be who I was. Not anymore." She nodded, the wind ruffling her hair. "Good. Maybe that means I can't be who I was either." I pulled her into a hug then, feeling the baby kick gently between us. For a second, I felt the weight of our childhood, the forts we'd built under dining room tables, the secrets we'd whispered into the dark, the dreams we'd half believed would come true. We were older now, harder, but maybe that wasn't the end of us. When I left, she stood in the doorway and watched me walk down the steps. No goodbyes. Just a nod, like an unspoken truce. Back in my apartment, the sun dipped behind the buildings, leaving long shadows across my floor. I picked up my phone and scrolled through old photos. Maddox and I in Santorini, laughing with our feet in the sand. Him on my couch, Nimbus curled on his chest. Blurry selfies from airports and hotel lobbies. Proof that this was real, even when the voices in my head tried to tell me it wasn't. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Maddox. "Boardroom politics is more vicious than any in-law dinner. Save me." Asterisk. I laughed out loud, startling Nimbus. Asterisk. "Come home." Asterisk. I texted back. Asterisk. "I'll make you grilled cheese." Asterisk. Asterisk. "Deal." Asterisk. He replied. Asterisk. 48 hours. Paris after? Asterisk. I stared at the words, my pulse skipping. He was always like this, spontaneous, extravagant, so sure that the world could bend to his will if he wanted it badly enough. Asterisk Paris after, asterisk I typed, my fingers trembling. I set the phone down and stood by the window, the city lights flickering to life one by one. This life, this new, terrifying, beautiful life, felt like a suit I was still learning how to wear. Some days it fit like a second skin. Others, it felt like an itch I couldn't quite scratch. But it was mine. Ours. That night, I pulled out my old knitting needles, the half-finished blanket for Liana's baby resting on my lap. The stitches came easily, muscle memory taking over as my mind drifted. Maybe it was silly to keep working on it when I could buy her 1,000 better things. But there was something grounding about the work, about making something with my own hands. I fell asleep with the needles clutched in my fingers, the blanket a soft pile against my knees. The next day, the storm arrived. It started with Clara's voice. Sharp. Sweet. Poisoned honey. Did you see the article? My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard her voice since the baby shower, and I'd hoped, stupidly, that maybe she'd let me be. But Clara never let anything be. What article? I asked, my mouth dry. Oh, come on, Arden. Don't play dumb. Asterisk Maddox Kane's Mystery Fiancé. From nobody to billionaire's bride. Your face is everywhere. Thought you'd want a heads up. The first night I stayed at Maddox's penthouse, I barely slept. His place was the opposite of my cramped apartment. A sweeping wall of windows with the city sprawling beneath us like a glittering ocean. Sleek furniture that looked more suited for magazine spreads than real life. But the space felt oddly warm with him there. Even Nimbus seemed to approve, curling up on the plush sofa like he'd always belonged. Maddox made chamomile tea and sat beside me on the sectional, one arm draped across my shoulders as I scrolled through headlines on my phone. It was all variations of the same story, the mystery fiancé, the nobody and the billionaire, the nobody and the billionaire, the no-buy Cinderella story in real life. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. It's like they've decided who I am without ever asking me. He plucked the phone from my hands and set it face down on the coffee table. They don't get to decide. You do. But they're not going to stop, he sighed, pressing a kiss to the side of my head. Then we give them something else to talk about. My breath caught. What does that mean? He leaned back, his eyes scanning my face. It means they can't spin what we give them ourselves. An interview, one time, on our terms. After that, we go quiet. We get to keep our life private. An interview? It's one day of hell to get a lifetime of peace. Trust me. I wanted to argue, but deep down I knew he was right. And maybe part of me wanted it too. To tell my story in my own words. To show them I wasn't some gold digger or helpless waif plucked from obscurity. I rested my head on his shoulder, my fingers curling around his wrist. Okay, but I want to pick the journalist. And the questions. A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. Deal. The next morning, Maddox's PR team arrived, polished, efficient, terrifyingly well prepared. They spread out across the living room with laptops and folders, throwing out phrases like Mayor Damage Control, Narrative, Asterisk, and Asterisk Reputation Management. I sat on the couch, knees pulled to my chest, while Maddox fielded their questions with the same calm that made boardrooms bend to his will. Every so often he glanced at me, a silent reassurance that I could pull the plug at any second. They wanted the engagement photos, the sweet anecdotes, the timeline that painted me in the best possible light. I gave them the truth instead. I'm not going to pretend I'm something I'm not, I said, my voice steady even as my palms sweated. Yes, I was single. Yes, I worked freelance gigs to pay rent. Yes, I knit baby blankets for my sister's shower. And I'm still that person. Maddox didn't make me. He found me. One of the PR women, Celia, I think, paused her frantic typing to look at me properly. And that's exactly why this will work. They want real. They don't want a fairy tale. They want a fighter. I wasn't sure I wanted to be anyone's fighter, but I nodded anyway. The next 48 hours blurred into a chaos of phone calls, statement drafts, and wardrobe fittings I'd never asked for. Maddox hovered just enough to keep me steady, but he let me steer. It was the first time in my life I felt like I was standing in the center of the storm without being ripped apart by it. On the morning of the interview, I woke before dawn. I stood at the window in one of Maddox's shirts, watching the sun bleed across the skyline. Nimbus wound himself around my ankles, meowing like he owned the place. Maddox came up behind me, his hands warm on my hips. "You ready?" I leaned back into him. "Ask me again when the cameras are rolling." He chuckled, pressing his lips to my neck. "They're going to love you." "I don't care if they love me. I just want them to see me." He turned me around, cupping my face in his hands. "They will, but you know what?" "What?" "I see you, all of you. And I wouldn't change a thing." Those words wrapped around my ribs like armor as the car whisked us to the studio. The lobby was a blur of lights, makeup brushes, and polite people with clipboards who pretended not to stare. Maddox's hand never left mine. When we sat across from the journalist, a woman named Kate Lewis with soft eyes and a sharper tongue than I'd expected, I felt my throat close. But then Kate asked, so gently I could almost pretend we were just two friends over coffee, "Arden, who were you before this?" And I told her about the hand-me-down dresses, and the nights spent alone with my cat. About the baby blanket I'd knit for my sister because it was all I could afford. About standing in the garden that day, feeling like I'd never be enough. And then I told her about Maddox. About Berlin. About the quiet nights in hotel rooms, when he held me like the world couldn't touch me. About the way he showed up, not just with a jet, but with his whole heart. When it was over, I felt raw, like I'd laid my skin open for the world to see. But there was a freedom in it too. The truth was ugly and beautiful and mine. Kate packed up her notes, her smile small but real. "They're going to eat this up, and they're going to love you." I caught Maddox's eye. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching me like I was his favorite story. Back in the car, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Was it enough? He reached over, brushing his thumb across my knuckles. "You were perfect. And now, we live our life, on our terms. But the world wasn't quite done with us yet. .. That night, the interview went live. Within an hour, my phone buzzed with a flood of messages. Some kind. Some vicious. Some just curious in that way people get when they smell a scandal. Liana's name popped up first. "You were amazing. I'm sorry for what I said. Asterisk." It made my throat ache. I sent back a simple, "Thank you, I love you." Asterisk. Then my mother, "I didn't know. I'm proud of you." I didn't respond right away. Some wounds needed more than a single text to heal. But the biggest surprise was Clara. She called, her voice a breathy whisper when I answered. "I didn't know you had that in you." I almost laughed. "Neither did I." She sighed. "Well, you win." It wasn't about winning. It never was. But I let her have her version of it if it helped her sleep at night. After the calls died down, Maddox and I sat on the terrace, a bottle of wine between us, the city a constellation of gold below. He rested his head against mine, the warm spring air curling around us like a promise. "You know what we should do next?" he said. I lifted an eyebrow. "Please don't say more interviews," he laughed, low and warm. "No more cameras. I'm thinking something quiet. Just us. Paris, maybe Santorini. Just somewhere that isn't here." I traced circles on his palm. "And when we come back?" He caught my chin, tilting my face to his. "When we come back, we build our real life. We do this our way. No more baby showers or gossip rags or people who think they get to decide who you are." I wanted to believe him, and as he kissed me under the canopy of stars, I did. But in the back of my mind, I knew the world wasn't done with us. There would be more whispers, more storms, more moments that would test what we were building. I closed my eyes and let myself sink into him, the weight of the ring on my finger grounding me to a life I'd fought like hell to claim. We were far from finished. And I was finally ready for whatever came next. .. The morning after our interview aired, the city felt like it was staring at me through 1,000 screens. I knew it was coming. The flood of praise and poison, the replays of my words edited into tiny sound bites. But knowing didn't make it easier. Maddox insisted on breakfast at our favorite little cafe. The waitress, who had always treated me like any other customer, did a double take when she saw the ring on my hand. Her eyes flicked to Maddox, then back to me, as if confirming some impossible rumor. "Big day?" she asked, pouring coffee like nothing had changed, though everything had. "Something like that," I said, managing a smile. Maddox squeezed my thigh under the table. He kept talking about Paris, Santorini, some faraway island where no one knew our names. But I could tell he was watching me for the cracks. He saw them before I even felt them. Back at the penthouse, the doorbell rang. A messenger, sharp suit, clipboard. He handed Maddox a thick envelope. I watched him slice it open with his thumb, the tension in his shoulders enough to make my own chest tighten. "What is it?" I asked. His eyes met mine, unreadable. "A cease and desist. From an old partner. Claims the interview breached some NDA from years ago. It's a stretch, but they want blood." "Blood from you or from me?" He dropped the letter onto the counter. "Doesn't matter. They'll settle for either of us if they can get it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to take that glossy magazine cover and tear it to shreds, but instead, I walked to the window, pressing my palm against the glass. The city spread out below, indifferent to my panic. "This is never going to stop, is it?" I said, my voice small. Maddox came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "It will. When they realize they can't touch us. When we stop giving them pieces to chew on. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm the weak link." He spun me to face him, his eyes fierce. Don't you dare say that. You're the reason I can even stand this. You think you're a liability? Arden, you're the only thing that makes this mess worth it." I wanted to believe him, I did. But there were cracks running through my resolve. Hairline fractures that no amount of PR spin could plaster over. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake listening to Maddox breathe beside me, the city hum like white noise through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I thought about my old life. The dusty apartment, the knitting needles, the tiny dreams that felt safe because they were invisible. In the morning, I told him I needed space. He didn't argue. He just looked at me with that heartbreak he tried so hard to hide, the one that made him look like a boy instead of the man who bought private jets like other people bought shoes. "Take what you need," he said. "But don't run so far you forget how to come back." I packed a single bag. Nimbus, annoyed at the disruption, meowed at me like I'd ruined his royal domain. I left him with Maddox. It felt too cruel to drag him back into my old life when he'd claimed this palace as his own. I took a cab to my old apartment. The landlord had been polite but skeptical when I'd asked to keep it. Asterisk, "You sure you need this place, Ms. Whitlock?" Asterisk, he'd asked, eyeing the engagement ring on my finger like it was an alien artifact. I needed it. I needed 4 walls that didn't echo with a man's success. I needed my own bed, my own chipped mugs, my own squeaky floorboards. For 2 days I sat in that tiny living room, drinking stale tea, scrolling through the endless hurricane of opinions about me. Some praised my honesty, some tore apart my hair, my voice, my smile. Some said I was a liar, some said I was a queen. All of it felt equally unreal. On the 3rd day, a knock rattled my door. I knew that knock. I opened it to find Liana, bundled in a sweater too big for her, dark circles under her eyes. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside, letting her move through my space like a ghost visiting her own grave. She sat at my kitchen table, tracing a crack in the laminate countertop with her thumb. "I saw the interview," she said after a while. "I know we already texted, but I needed to say it. I'm proud of you." A laugh bubbled out of me, sharp and raw. Proud? For what? For blowing up my life on national TV? For telling the truth. For not letting them spin you into something you're not. I sat across from her, my fingers picking at a loose thread on my sweater. Sometimes I wish I could crawl back inside my old life, just undo all of this. "You don't mean that." I looked at her, my sister who had always seemed so much bigger than me, so much braver in her perfect, polished life. But she looked tired now, softer somehow. "Mom called me," she said. "She wants to do a family lunch. No gossip, no cameras, just us." I flinched. "Another showdown?" She shook her head. "A peace offering." She said she's trying to understand. She wants to get it right before the baby comes. I couldn't help it. I laughed again. "A baby fixes everything, huh?" Liana's smile was fragile. "Maybe it does. Or maybe it just reminds us what actually matters." I agreed to go. Not because I thought it would fix us, but because I needed to see if the pieces we'd shattered could at least be rearranged into something new. When I got to my parents' house, it felt different. Smaller. The dining room table, where I'd once hidden under the cloth during hide and seek, was now a battlefield for gentle apologies and cautious truths. My mother made a roast. My father poured wine with hands that trembled a little. We talked about the interview, about Maddox, about the ring, about how they'd always seen me, fragile, independent, hard to read, and how maybe they'd been wrong. When I got home that night, my phone buzzed. "Maddox. Still breathing? Asterisk. Asterisk. Barely. Asterisk." I replied. A minute later. "Good. Breathe. Then come home." Asterisk. But what was home now? My apartment with its peeling paint? His penthouse with its guarded elevators and floor-to-ceiling glass? Or something we hadn't built yet? I lay in my bed, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, thinking about the jet that landed at my sister's baby shower. About the shocked faces. About the ring that felt like both armor and a target. I didn't have an answer. But for the first time, not knowing didn't feel like failure. The next morning, I packed my bag again. I left a note for my landlord, telling him I'd be back for the rest. I left a bowl of food for the neighborhood stray cat that liked to lurk under my porch. And then I called Maddox. No words. Just, "I'm coming home." Asterisk. When he opened the door to the penthouse, he didn't say a thing. He just pulled me in, kissed me like the world hadn't cracked open beneath our feet, and whispered, "You don't have to prove anything. Not to them. Not to me." I pulled back, pressing my forehead to his. "Maybe not, but I'm going to prove it to myself." He grinned. "That's my girl." And for the first time in weeks, I believed him. The first night back at the penthouse felt like stepping onto solid ground after days at sea. Maddox didn't pepper me with questions. He didn't ask for explanations. He just let me be, handing me a mug of mint tea and curling up beside me on the huge sectional, like he was afraid I'd vanish if he blinked. We watched the city lights blink awake one by one. Nimbus claimed Maddox's lap immediately, his low purr vibrating against my thigh like a warm reminder that some loyalties never waver. The world outside hadn't stopped spinning. If anything, the press had gotten more vicious, the comment sections more rabid. Maddox's lawyers were already knee-deep in letters and threats, but that noise felt distant now. I let it fade into the hum of the city. By morning I woke with my head on Maddox's chest, the steady rise and fall of his breathing grounding me. The soft light painted his jaw in angles I wanted to memorize forever. When he opened his eyes, he smiled like he'd been waiting for me to do the same. "Breakfast?" he asked, his voice still raspy from sleep. I laughed into his shirt. "Do we have to get out of bed for that?" "Nope," he said, leaning over me to grab his phone. "Room service is the greatest invention of mankind. Next to you, obviously." I groaned, pushing his shoulder playfully. "You're ridiculous." "Ridiculously in love," he corrected, pressing a kiss to my forehead. After breakfast, pancakes, fruit, and strong coffee, we sat cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by messy sheets and the soft glow of a new day. I toyed with the corner of his t-shirt, gathering my thoughts. "I want to work again," I said suddenly. The words came out small but solid. His eyes met mine, dark and thoughtful. "Work? You mean freelancing again?" "Yes and no. I don't want to hide behind it like I used to. I want to build something that's actually mine. Real clients. Real contracts. Maybe a small team someday. Something no tabloid can touch or twist." A slow grin spread across his face, pride warming every inch of his expression. "Good. That's my girl." I rolled my eyes at the phrase but didn't protest. He meant it like a benediction, not a claim. Dash 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 dot dot. The next few weeks blurred into a steady rhythm that felt, for once, like living instead of surviving. Maddox traveled to Tokyo for a board meeting. I stayed behind, working at the long dining table that overlooked the skyline. Nimbus perched like a fluffy king by the window, keeping watch over me and the endless stream of design briefs and client calls. My mother called twice. The first time, she stumbled over small talk about Liana's nursery wallpaper and the best car seats. The second time, she asked if I'd visit before the baby came. "You don't have to bring him," she added quickly. "Just you." I didn't promise her anything, but the knot in my chest loosened a little. Maybe we were all learning how to find each other again, slowly, imperfectly. One afternoon, Clara called out of the blue. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. "Arden, hey!" Her voice dripped sweetness that didn't quite reach her words. "I just heard you're starting a new business. That's brave." I could practically hear the unspoken after everything. "Brave or stupid," I said lightly. "Either way, it's happening." "Well, I hope you're ready. People are still talking, you know. They always will." "Good," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "Let them. I've got work to do." When I hung up, I laughed, soft, incredulous. I didn't need her approval anymore. Or anyone's. Dash 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 dot dot. Maddox came back from Tokyo with the same grin and a new round of scars from fighting boardroom politics. We spent 2 nights doing nothing but binging old movies on the couch, eating takeout, and ignoring the world. But real life always finds its way back. One evening, Liana called. This time, her voice cracked. "It's early, but I think I'm in labor. Mitchell's driving me to the hospital." My chest clenched. "What do you need?" "Nothing. I just wanted you to know, in case—" "Hey," I cut her off, my voice fierce. "You've got this. I'll be there as soon as I can." When I told Maddox, he didn't ask if I wanted him to come. He just grabbed his keys. The hospital was a blur of antiseptic air and hushed chaos. Liana looked tiny in the big bed, her hair plastered to her forehead. She squeezed my hand so tight I thought my bones might snap. "It hurts," she gasped. "It's not supposed to hurt like this." "It is," I whispered. "And you're stronger than this pain. You're stronger than you think." Hours passed. Mitchell hovered like a ghost, his own fear painted clear across his face. Maddox sat in the waiting room, his phone buzzing with work calls he ignored. Every so often, he caught my eye through the glass, a silent promise that he wasn't going anywhere. When the baby finally came, squalling and red and impossibly tiny, Liana sobbed so hard she shook. And I did too. We held each other in that sterile room, the baby nestled between us like a new piece of our broken puzzle stitched together. When it was over, I stepped into the hallway, wiping my eyes. Maddox stood and pulled me in without a word. His hug was warm, steadying. The city buzzed beyond the hospital windows, oblivious. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so," I said. "They're going to be okay. We're going to be okay." He kissed the top of my head. "Damn right you are." That night, we went back to the penthouse. I curled up beside him in bed, exhaustion tugging at my bones. But sleep didn't come easy. My mind replayed the baby's tiny cries, Liana's tears, my mother's voice on the phone promising to be better. When dawn broke, I sat up and looked at Maddox, still asleep, his hair a mess across his forehead. I knew the world would still come for us. I knew there would be more whispers, more storms. But for the first time, I didn't dread it. Because now, I knew who I was. Dash, 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 dot. The days after the baby's birth blurred together in a way that felt softer than the chaos before. Liana named her daughter Amelia Rose, tiny, pink, and already a force of nature in her swaddle. When I held her, her fist curled around my finger with a grip that made something shift in my chest. A reminder that life could start over, tiny and fierce, even when you were sure the best parts had already been decided. Maddox visited with me every day at the hospital. He kept his distance at first, polite, respectful, but I caught him watching me hold Amelia with an expression I couldn't quite name. It was the same one he wore when he looked at me across the dining table, when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Like he was seeing something in me I hadn't yet learned to see in myself. One evening, after we'd left Liana to rest, he slipped his arm around my shoulders in the parking garage. His cologne mingled with the sharp scent of concrete and late-night drizzle. "You're good with her," he said softly. I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. "She mostly just cries and eats and stares at the ceiling. How could I be bad with her?" He stopped me beside the car, searching my face. "You're good with people when you let yourself be. With your sister, with your family, with me." Something fluttered in my chest, warmth and fear all tangled together. "Don't make me out to be something I'm not." "I'm not making you out to be anything," he said. "I'm telling you what's true. You spend so much time worrying you're not enough. But I'm the one who keeps wondering if I deserve you." I leaned into him then, pressing my forehead against his collarbone. "We're a mess, you know that, right?" His laughter rumbled through me. "Yeah, but we're our mess." When he kissed me, the world shrank to just that moment. Warm breath, cold drizzle, his hand cupping the back of my neck like I might disappear if he let go. He didn't let go. Not then. Not when we drove back to the penthouse. Not when he curled around me in bed that night, the city humming beneath our window like an unspoken promise that maybe we could make this work. Despite the headlines and the whispers and the storms. A week later, I stood in the middle of what would become my first real office. A tiny converted loft in an old brick building downtown. The landlord had raised an eyebrow when I'd handed over the deposit in full. Maddox's silent presence behind me like a guardian angel who refused to speak up unless he absolutely had to. "This is really what you want?" he'd asked as we stood on the dusty concrete floor, paint peeling from the window frames. "Yes," I said. "I don't want my name to live under yours forever. I want something that's mine." He grinned, pulling me in by my hips. "Just make sure you let me hang one of your first designs in my office. I want to brag about you to every suit that walks through the door." Now, standing there alone, the keys cold in my palm, I felt the first twinge of fear. What if I failed? What if the whispers followed me here too? What if the only reason I had this space was because of the man who'd landed a jet in my sister's backyard? I turned those questions over and over like stones in my pocket. And then I did what I'd learned to do since all of this began. I reminded myself they didn't matter. The work would speak, and so would I. I called my first client that afternoon, a small local cafe that needed a rebrand. The owner, a sweet woman named Nadine, didn't care about the ring on my finger or the gossip rags that painted me as Maddox's Cinderella. She just wanted a new logo that didn't look like it had been designed in word art circa 1999. And that I could do. When I got back to the penthouse that night, Maddox was already there, sprawled across the sectional in sweatpants and glasses, reading something on his tablet. Nimbus sprawled on his chest like a furry badge of honor. "How's the Empire?" he asked as I kicked off my shoes. "Cracked window frame, a coffee machine that leaks, and more invoices than I know how to track," I said. "It's perfect." He set the tablet aside, tugging me down to straddle his lap. "You're perfect," I groaned. "Gross. Admit it, you love it." I did. God help me, I did. Spring turned into early summer. Liana brought Amelia to visit once she was strong enough, the baby's tiny hands grasping at my necklace, her eyes so impossibly blue they made my heart ache. My mother came too, standing stiffly at first, but softening when Maddox insisted she sit at the head of the table for dinner. There were still things we didn't talk about, old hurts that lurked in the corners. But sometimes silence was its own kind of truce. One night, after everyone had left and the penthouse was ours again, Maddox poured 2 glasses of wine and pulled me onto the terrace. The city spread out beneath us, a tapestry of gold and steel. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked, voice low. I tipped my head back against his shoulder. "Like what?" "Like a wedding. Or whatever comes after that." A laugh bubbled up before I could stop it. Is this your version of a proposal? Again? He shrugged, grinning into my hair. I'm allowed to make sure you don't change your mind. I twisted to face him, one hand on his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. I'm not going anywhere, Maddox. Good, he said, because I was thinking somewhere small, just us, maybe Paris, or that cliff in Santorini you loved. I felt my throat tighten. And then what? He brushed his thumb over my cheek like he was memorizing every part of me. Then we come home, and you build your empire, and I build mine. And we keep doing this, whatever this is, until the world learns they can't touch us. And I realized, standing there with the city humming beneath our feet, that I wasn't scared anymore. Not of the noise or the gossip or the girl I'd been before all of this. I was Arden Whitlock, the sister who showed up even when it hurt, the woman who said yes when it would have been easier to say no, the designer with the tiny loft and the cracked windows and the clients who didn't care who she slept beside at night. I was me. And that was more than enough. ... I turned those questions over and over like stones in my pocket, and then I did what I'd learned to do since all of this began. I reminded myself they didn't matter. The work would speak, and so would I. I called my first client that afternoon, a small local cafe that needed a rebrand. The owner, a sweet woman named Nadine, didn't care about the ring on my finger or the gossip rags that painted me as Maddox's Cinderella. She just wanted a new logo that didn't look like it had been designed in word art circa 1999, and that I could do. When I got back to the penthouse that night, Maddox was already there, sprawled across the sectional in sweatpants and glasses, reading something on his tablet. Nimbus sprawled on his chest like a furry badge of honor. "How's the empire?" he asked as I kicked off my shoes. "Cracked window frame, a coffee machine that leaks, and more invoices than I know how to track," I said. "It's perfect." He set the tablet aside, tugging me down to straddle his lap. "You're perfect," I groaned. "Gross? Admit it, you love it." I did. God help me, I did. ... Spring turned into early summer. Liana brought Amelia to visit once she was strong enough, the baby's tiny hands grasping at my necklace, her eyes so impossibly blue they made my heart ache. My mother came too, standing stiffly at first, but softening when Maddox insisted she sit at the head of the table for dinner. There were still things we didn't talk about, old hurts that lurked in the corners. But sometimes silence was its own kind of truce. One night, after everyone had left and the penthouse was ours again, Maddox poured 2 glasses of wine and pulled me onto the terrace. The city spread out beneath us, a tapestry of gold and steel. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked, voice low. I tipped my head back against his shoulder. "Like what?" "Like a wedding, or whatever comes after that." A laugh bubbled up before I could stop it. "Is this your version of a proposal? Again?" He shrugged, grinning into my hair. "I'm allowed to make sure you don't change your mind." I twisted to face him, one hand on his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. "I'm not going anywhere, Maddox." "Good," he said, because I was thinking somewhere small, just us, maybe Paris, or that cliff in Santorini you loved. I felt my throat tighten. And then what? He brushed his thumb over my cheek like he was memorizing every part of me. "Then we come home, and you build your empire, and I build mine. And we keep doing this, whatever this is, until the world learns they can't touch us." And I realized, standing there with the city humming beneath our feet, that I wasn't scared anymore. Not of the noise or the gossip or the girl I'd been before all of this. I was Arden Whitlock, the sister who showed up even when it hurt. The woman who said yes when it would have been easier to say no. The designer with the tiny loft and the cracked windows, and the clients who didn't care who she slept beside at night. I was me, and that was more than enough. ... I woke up the morning after that conversation with Maddox with a calm I hadn't felt in years. It didn't last long. Real life has a way of slipping its fingers into your hair and tugging hard when you least expect it. But for those few precious moments, it was just the quiet, his warmth beside me, and the soft hum of the city waking up below. When I slipped out of bed, Maddox mumbled something into his pillow. I leaned over, pressed a kiss to his temple. "Go back to sleep," I whispered. His hand found mine under the covers. "You're not running away again, are you?" I laughed. "Not today." "Good." His voice faded as sleep reclaimed him. I spent the day at my little loft studio, the cracked window frames thrown open to let the early summer breeze swirl through. Nadine's cafe logo draft sat propped on my new corkboard, a simple design, elegant but warm, just like her. It felt good to care about fonts and color palettes again. Small things. Real things. Halfway through the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Liana. Asterisk, "You around?" Asterisk. I smiled. Asterisk always. Asterisk. 15 minutes later, she showed up at my door with Amelia strapped to her chest in a carrier too big for her tiny frame. Liana looked exhausted, her hair scraped back in a messy bun, eyes smudged with sleeplessness. But when I opened the door, she grinned like we were 16 again. "I needed out of the house," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invite. "Mitchell is driving me insane. He acts like if I stand up too fast, I'll explode." I laughed, taking Amelia's tiny hand in mine. "He loves you, and her." She flopped onto my battered old love seat, Amelia squirming until she settled back to sleep. For a while, we didn't say anything. The studio was small enough that silence filled every corner, but it didn't feel awkward. "You did it," Liana said eventually, her voice quiet. "You really did it. You have this place. Your own place." I sank into my squeaky office chair, spinning it slightly to face her. "It's not much. The coffee machine leaks and the ceiling creaks every time the people upstairs walk around. Still yours, though." Her eyes glistened a little. I pretended not to see. "Mom wants to have you and Maddox over for dinner again," she said after a beat. I raised an eyebrow. "Another interrogation?" "No. Just normal. She wants to feel normal again." Dad, too. I pictured our mother, fussing with tablecloths, arranging the good china that only came out twice a year. For a heartbeat, I felt the old sting of resentment. Then it slipped away, replaced by something gentler. "Tell her we'll come," I said. "But she has to let Maddox help with the dishes this time." Liana snorted. "She'll hate that." Good. We talked about nothing and everything. Amelia woke up once, fussed, then fell asleep again on my shoulder, her tiny breath warm against my collarbone. When Liana finally stood to leave, she pressed a soft kiss to my cheek. "I'm proud of you, you know," she murmured. "I know I don't say it enough, but I am." It was the kind of thing I'd always wanted to hear, and the sting of wanting it had dulled to something sweeter now. I held her tight for a long second. "I'm proud of you, too." After they left, I sat at my desk, watching the city through the grimy loft windows. My phone buzzed on the table. A news alert about some new rumor, some fresh spin on our story. I silenced it, dropping the phone in my desk drawer. Let them talk. ... By the time I got back to the penthouse that night, Maddox was pacing in the living room, phone to his ear. He looked up when I came in, relief flooding his eyes. "Yeah, we'll handle it," he said into the phone. "No, she doesn't need to comment. That's final." He hung up, tossing the phone onto the coffee table. New spin. Some online tabloid digging into your high school boyfriend. Apparently, they think it's news you once dated a guy who got arrested for shoplifting a six-pack when he was 17. I stared at him, then burst out laughing. They're really scraping the bottom now. His shoulders relaxed at my laugh. "You're not mad?" "Nope," I said, crossing the room to wrap my arms around his waist. "Let them look. I'm not 15 anymore, and he's not part of my life. They can twist it however they want. They don't get to have me." He kissed the top of my head. "You're handling this better than I ever did." "You taught me how," I said, muffled against his chest. That night, we curled up on the terrace with blankets wrapped around our shoulders, a bottle of cheap red wine between us. The city stretched out, golden and indifferent. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Any of it?" He pulled back to look at me, brow furrowed. "Regret what?" "Landing your jet in my sister's backyard. Bringing all this noise into my life." A slow grin spread across his face. "Every second. But I'd do it again tomorrow." I smacked his arm, laughing so hard my eyes watered. He caught my hand, lacing our fingers together. "We can do the wedding however you want," he said suddenly. "Big, small, in a courthouse or on a beach. Or not at all, if you change your mind." I pressed my lips to his jaw. "I'm not changing my mind." "You might. People do." "People do," I agreed. "But not us. We're too damn stubborn." He laughed into my hair. "Damn right." I rested my head on his shoulder, listening to the city below. The noise would come back. It always did. But I'd stopped letting it drown me. I'd learned to float. When we went inside, he lifted me onto the kitchen island, his mouth on mine before I could protest. The world outside the windows fell away. No headlines, no gossip, no cautious family dinners. Just us, raw and real and messy. And for once, that was enough. ... When the day of our wedding finally came, it didn't look anything like the stories they'd written about us. There was no 500-person guest list, no aerial drones circling a sprawling estate, no magazine deal with exclusive photos. There was just Maddox, me, a stretch of soft white sand in Santorini, and a breeze that tangled my hair in ways no stylist could control. Liana was there too, holding Amelia on her hip while Mitchell adjusted the tiny floral crown slipping down his daughter's wispy hair. My mother and father sat side by side on folding chairs, hands clasped so tight you'd think they were the ones saying vows. Even Clara came, uninvited but not unwelcome, and for once, her smile looked real. I stood barefoot in a simple dress that brushed my ankles, the fabric light enough to flutter with every heartbeat. Maddox looked almost undone beside me, his tie forgotten in the villa, hair ruffled by the salt wind, his eyes locked on mine like there was no one else in the world. "Are you ready?" the officiant asked, his voice so gentle I almost laughed. I reached for Maddox's hands. They were warm, steady, his thumb brushing circles on my palm the same way he had that first night in Berlin when he asked if he could buy me a drink. "I've been ready since the day you landed that jet in my sister's backyard," I whispered. He grinned, that crooked half-smile that still made my knees go weak. "And I've been ready since you told me to wipe my shoes on your doormat before I kissed you the first time." The vows were short, stumbled through with laughter, and a few tears neither of us bothered to hide. Amelia squawked halfway through mine, reminding me that life didn't wait for perfect timing. I thanked her for that later. When the officiant told Maddox to kiss me, he didn't hesitate. He dipped me back into the breeze like a scene from some old black-and-white movie. Our guests clapped and whooped and cheered, but all I heard was his heartbeat pounding against mine, the distant waves crashing in time with it. ... We spent the rest of the day on that beach, barefoot and sun-drenched. Our fancy dinner replaced by local wine and whatever the villa staff could throw on the grill. Liana tucked Amelia into a shaded hammock, falling asleep next to her while Mitchell made everyone laugh so hard the stars came out early just to watch. When Maddox and I slipped away later, our feet raw from dancing in the sand, he led me up the stone steps to the tiny villa we'd rented for the week. No entourage, no press, no walls of security, just the two of us. Inside, he sat me on the edge of the bed, my hair tangled around my shoulders, my cheeks sore from smiling. He brushed his thumb across my jaw, his eyes dark in the flickering candlelight. "You know," he said, voice husky, "you could still back out." I laughed, swatting his shoulder. "After all this?" "You wish." He leaned in, pressing his forehead to mine. "You changed everything, Arden Whitlock. You know that?" I shook my head, tears pricking my eyes. "No." "You did." He pulled back just enough to meet my gaze. "No. They all thought I was untouchable. That my money, my name, My planes. Your ridiculous suits, he chuckled. That they made me. But you made me real. You made me remember who I was before all that. And who I want to be now. I cupped his face in my hands. And you made me believe I wasn't broken, that I never was. His kiss was soft at first, then urgent, a promise sealed over and over again in the space between our breaths. Later, when I lay tangled in his arms, the sea whispering against the cliffs below, I thought about every version of me that had led to this moment. The lonely sister standing by the snack table at Liana's shower, the girl knitting baby blankets in her tiny apartment, the woman who let herself be seen by a man who refused to look away. They were all still here, stitched together by the choice to stop apologizing for who I was. .. We flew back home 3 days later. No jets parked in neighborhood airstrips this time, just the quiet hum of first class. Maddox's hand warm in mine, the wedding band on my finger catching the light like a secret I didn't need to hide. When we landed, the world was still waiting. Cameras. Headlines. New speculation about what our next scandal would be. But they felt like echoes now, distant and hollow. Liana called on the drive home. "How was it?" she asked. I could hear Amelia squealing in the background, her tiny voice a reminder that life didn't pause for anyone. "Perfect," I said. "Messy. Hours." She laughed. "That sounds about right. .. I spent the first week back at my studio. Paint chips fanned across my desk, my inbox overflowing with inquiries I'd once only dreamed of. Some came because they wanted this Smitationnadastur designer. But more came because they'd watched me stand my ground in front of the entire world, and they wanted some of that fire for themselves. One night, after I signed my biggest client yet, I found Maddox asleep on the studio couch, nimbus curled on his chest. He'd come straight from a board meeting, still in his suit, tie undone, hair a mess. My entire heart clenched at the sight. I sat on the edge of the couch and traced my finger along his jaw. His eyes fluttered open, soft and lazy. "Long day?" I whispered. "Worth it if I get to see you like this," he murmured. He reached for my hand, kissing my knuckles. "How's the empire?" "Growing." His grin was sleepy, proud. "Good." I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat under Nimbus's soft purr. "Do you think it'll ever feel easy?" I asked. He ran his fingers through my hair. "No. But that's what makes it worth it. If it was easy, it wouldn't be real." And he was right. The whispers would never really go away. There would always be more rumors, more cameras, more people waiting to see if we'd crash and burn. But they didn't get to write our story. We did. .. A few months later, Liana hosted a family dinner at her house. No balloons this time. No pastel perfection. Just mismatched plates, a roast that went dry in the oven, Mitchell chasing Amelia around the living room while our mother fussed over a salad she'd already dressed 3 times. I stood in the kitchen, glass of wine in hand, watching Maddox laugh with my father about some sports team he pretended to care about. He caught my eye, winked, and for a heartbeat, I felt it all settle into place. The girl I'd been at that baby shower would have hidden by the window, waiting for someone to invite her into the conversation. Now, I was here, woven into every corner of this messy, beautiful scene. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. After dinner, Liana and I sat on the porch steps, our feet bare against the cool wood. Amelia slept inside, her soft snores drifting through the open window. "You happy?" Liana asked. I leaned my head on her shoulder. "Yeah, I really am." She nudged me with her elbow. "Good. You deserve it. Even if you did upstage my baby shower." We both laughed so hard we woke the baby. Inside, Maddox watched us with that look again. Like he knew every version of me, past and present, and chose me anyway. I chose me too. And I knew in that warm, ordinary moment that they could say what they wanted. Write what they wanted. Guess what came next? But the truth was simple. They mocked my single life. They called me less than. And then my fiancé landed in a private jet and turned my whole story into something they could never control. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was mine. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.